I'm going to talk about low-income reporting now. So I emailed several documents, I believe on October 10th. Feel free to reach out to me if you didn't receive those links, but we'll go over those resources. For low-income reporting, this is for all STIF recipients. So this is for the STIF formula folks, the discretionary folks, including non-formula PTSPs. So general information about this low-income mitigation report. The due date for the first annual report is August 14, 2020, and this is to align with that cycle 1 formula, that fourth quarter report deadline. And the actual low-income mitigation report will be attached to that fourth quarter SPR. David went through that demonstration and showed you at the SPR level where the attachments are, and that's where we'll want this report. Again, this is all STIF formula and discretionary providers, including non-formula, will have to adhere to this date. And the purpose of this report is actually from Administrative Rule 732-040-00251. Each QE receiving STIF funds is required to submit an annual STIF low-income tax mitigation report detailing any actions taken by any PTSPs located within the area of that QE to mitigate the impact of the STIF tax on passengers who reside in low-income communities. So this is a requirement for everyone to complete this report. And how this is going to work is that the PTSPs are going to submit that form to their QE. The QE is going to complete a cover letter and a form themselves, bundle all the PTSP forms that they received, and submit a consolidated report to ODOT, again, attaching that in that fourth quarter SPR. So for the cover letter, that cover letter is for the QE to complete. There's a section for them to explain how the QE defines and identifies passengers in low-income communities. There's an area to list the PTSPs who submitted the low-income impact mitigation forms, and they're going to, again, submit that cover letter and attach all low-income mitigation forms to ODOT. And it is up to the QEs and the PTSPs to coordinate on when they should be, the QE should be receiving those submissions from them. We do have some advice listed on the forms to follow. So I'm going to open up the cover letter next, because that's the next section. So here is the cover letter that has been finalized. Just go to my notes. As you see here, we have that administrative rule with why this is a requirement and how each QE receiving STIF funds must complete this cover letter and include all those low-income mitigation forms to ODOT. And it is the responsibility of this QE to bundle and submit those forms from their PTSPs, including non-formula funded PTSPs. I know I'm going to repeat this over and over, but you have to have the non-formula funded PTSPs in that bundle. The QE must complete a form themselves, and again, it's the PTSP's responsibility to submit that form in advance to the QE of that deadline of the fourth quarter SPR, which that first annual report will be August 14, 2020. So what we want to move to here is how this cover letter looks like. Here's instructions on completing this form, providing details, and then submitting this to the fourth quarter SPR, which is going to be due on August 14. This is some fields to just put the QE name, and explaining how the QE defines and identifies passengers in low-income communities. The QE may enter the information from their approved STIF plan. So you can actually just copy and paste what's included in your STIF plan regarding the low-income definition. Or there may be more additional details in a QE's, their bylaws, their advisory committee bylaws, and that can also suffice for this area. And here's where you're going to list all the PTSPs who submitted the low-income mitigation forms. So you can do bullets or whatever you want to just list who they are. A, B, C. And here's the signature and date areas for you to complete, and just save that and make sure you include that with the forms that I'll go over next. So I'll just jump to the next item. So we have, do you have questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of quick ones.
Sure.
Good stopping point. Linda, can you resend the docs you're referring to? I've gone through all my emails and deleted emails and cannot find it. Thank you.
Sure. I will send the forms to all who are listed the registrants. And then also I'll do an email blast when we have this recording available and the presentation posted, and again, copies of the links as well, access to the hyperlinks.
And one more related to this. If we have multiple discretionary projects in addition to formula, do we just need to submit one report based on consolidated data?
So one report, so if it's a provider or a QE, is that a QE asking the question? Can you repeat that again?
If we have multiple discretionary projects in addition to formula, do we just need to submit one report based on consolidated data?
Yes. So they can just complete one of the low-income mitigation forms and highlight the actions, and if they are part of, so if they're the discretionary projects, I would just kind of highlight what discretionary projects, feel free, Patrick, if you wanted to jump in, what's applicable with the actions to mitigate low-income impacts, and then also if they are on multiple STIF plans, if they're listed as a provider for multiple STIF plans, they can include that information as well on that same form. So they only have to complete one form and submit that to the QE.
So you can consolidate that data across STIF plans and across funds?
Correct.
Great.
Good question. Anything else?
We have one not related to the presentation, so let's get that one at the end.
Okay. All right, and now I'm going to jump into the form. So this form also has just some background information on the first page, the administrative rule, the low-income household defined as a household with the total income of which does not exceed 200% of the poverty guidelines. Information on when to submit the form. Again, here's what I mentioned earlier. We have some advice here. PTSPs are advised to submit this form 30 days prior to their fourth quarter SPR deadline of August 14, 2020 to the QE. However, if the QE wants to receive these forms at a certain date or time period, it is up to the QE and the PTSPs to coordinate that. This is just like a friendly suggestion. I'm going to jump to the form. Here at the top of the form, we have instructions on how to complete this form, providing as much detail as possible, and again, submitting that form at least 30 days prior to the SPR deadline of August 14th, up to the QEs and PTSPs to coordinate. Here is where you put the name of the PTSP, and the PTSP is going to check what fund sources were received. So I think this jumps to that question earlier, having all that information on one place. And then they're going to put the name of the QE based on the location of the PTSP, and I'll get into that in the next document. So here we'll put, this is my QE, it's QE. And here is where they're going to describe the actions, if any, that this PTSP has taken to mitigate the impact of the STIF tax on passengers residing in low-income communities. If no actions have been taken, write NA, non-applicable. So even if a PTSP hasn't done anything related to low-income communities, they still need to complete this form. They can put NA and submit that to the QE. Otherwise, they can provide just a summary of all the actions and however format they want to display that information. It's up to the PTSP to provide that information for us. And then there's a signature at the very bottom of this page and the date. So this is what's going to be submitted to the QE, this form. And I'm going to jump to this resource, which was emailed out to all providers. And this is a reference guide that we created, myself and my colleague Patrick DePriest, who's here. He's our discretionary coordinator. And this table shows the QEs and their applicable PTSPs specifically for the low-income impact mitigation form requirement. And the chart is based on where a PTSP is located and which QE would be the appropriate contact to send the form to. A PTSP can complete the form and outline what low-income actions in a region are applicable to a QE. And if a PTSP is listed in other STIF plans, then they can describe the actions for each QE on the same form. So this is just a quick reference. I think it would help a lot of the non-formula discretionary folks who may not know exactly who is the right QE contact. So we created this form, or actually this chart, to help out. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out, but this is posted on our website and this was emailed out. Did you have any questions, Janelle?
Yeah, we have a couple about deadlines.
Sure.
So the first is, this is a STIF question, but not related to the presentation. What period was the October 15th disbursement to QEs for? Was it for the July 2018 through December 2019 period?
So that depends on whether or not you're a Cycle 1 or a Cycle 2 applicant. So the October 15th disbursement is intended to be for fiscal year 20 quarter 2. So the October through December quarter is what those funds are intended to be used for. Now, if you're a Cycle 2 applicant and you submitted it later, then the disbursement is all of the prior disbursements that Cycle 1 had already received, kind of bundled into one. So that would be your fiscal year 19 disbursement, and then the fiscal year 20 quarter 1 and fiscal year 20 quarter 2 disbursements.
And this question touches on that a little bit as well. References have been made to reporting deadlines and submission requirements information shared in prior webinars. Is there a one-stop source for all this information, as well as the low-income impact mitigation information now being shared?
Yeah, I would reference our overview document. I believe that has all this information included. We may need to update it with some additional information since we finalized some documents, but for now, it's called the, actually I just jumped to it right now, the STIF Formula Reporting Requirements Overview. We should have our deadlines there, the tables that we went over, information about reporting, guidance on reporting, and there is information on the low income and when that's due, and it does reference the fourth quarter SPR. So the low income impact mitigation forms are all separate because they're separate documents, but that information, I believe this overview document is probably the best resource for an overview of reporting, deadlines, disbursements. Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, and I would just add that any applicants that are receiving discretionary money under STIF can expect the discretionary reporting guidance today. This afternoon it will be dispersed to all recipients.
Great.
Just another place to find this type of information.
One more timing question. If collection began July 1st, 2018, is ODOT estimating Q2 collections by dispersing at the beginning?
Can you read that one more time, just so I make sure I'm understanding the question?
If collection began July 1st, 2018, is ODOT estimating Q2 collections by dispersing at the beginning?
So we are not estimating the amount of tax collections in our disbursement. What we're doing is we're dispersing the actual amount collected from the prior quarter. So there's kind of this lag period between when the taxes are collected and when that tax money is going out. So you're receiving the prior quarter tax dollars for use in this upcoming quarter, if that makes any sense. Because we can't give out tax money that we haven't received at this moment in time. And the way that STIF was designed and the way that it's in statute and in rule is that we are just flushing out actual dollar values of what we receive.
Thank you.
Great. Are we good? Yep. Awesome. And just a few more things to wrap up. We went over the annual reporting of low income. There is also the QE budget that's a requirement, and the QE and PTSP annual financial audits, which is referenced in that overview document that I just discussed. So we will be sending reminders on the deadlines for the report for low income, and if we haven't received the audit and budget information. For the copy of the QE's budget, that deadline is no later than 30 days after the adoption, and all financial audit reports deadline is no later than 30 days after the receipt of the auditor's final reports, and that needs to be emailed out to the ODOT ptdreporting@odot.state.or.us email address. So this is referenced in the overview document, but we will be keeping track of what's been received from the QEs and from the providers. And quickly, resources and contacts. We have that overview document, which I talked about earlier, which is very helpful, background information, the guidance for determining whether expenditures are substantially compliant and consistent with the STIF plan, which David alluded to earlier during his demonstration, and the common issues section. And there's a lot of helpful information from the STIF training resources from the grant management training, which was done in July. We had another demonstration there, and we went over some general formula reporting overview as well. So you'll notice if you go to the demonstration, it is a little outdated since there has been Optus upgrades, but it is helpful if you need kind of a general walkthrough. And the overview from the formula reporting, it's pretty much the same information that we're sharing and that we keep reiterating regarding the deadlines and requirements that are needed from the QEs and the providers. The resources that I shared today and discussed were the low-income cover letter form, that PTSP reference guide, which is posted on our website. I will share links again to this to the registrants who have attended the webinar. And as David talked about earlier in the grant management training, there was the request for reimbursement supporting documents checklist that was referenced for backup documentation. For technical assistance on your SPR, David is available as well as your support analyst with the different regions. So we have Amanda, Joe, and Maggie who can help you. And for those who are attending the Oregon Public Transportation Conference this weekend, starting Saturday, on Sunday, there will be a Optus drop-in workshop, which includes SPR assistance. That's going to be on, Sunday, October 27 from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. for those who may be available and want to get some additional help. And our STIF program contacts include myself, David again, and Karen. So if you have any questions regarding this, feel free to reach out to me first. For discretionary, as Patrick mentioned, you can reach out to him. He'll be sharing that information shortly. So any other questions, Janelle, that we received?
We have one more clarification on the quarters question. So the original question was, if collection began July 1st, 2018, is ODOT estimating Q2 collections by dispersing at the beginning? And the follow-up question is, if collection began July 1st, hasn't only 5 quarters passed?
I'd have to look at the calendar to figure that out in my head.
Fair enough.
I will follow up with that question.
Great. We'll do an individual follow-up, and that's all we have for questions. So thank you, question answers.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your patience regarding our reporting requirements. Have a great day.